The day my breakthrough discovery coincided with my divorce papers being finalized, I knew the universe had a twisted sense of humor. I stared at the petri dish under the microscope, my hands trembling as I processed what I was seeing. After 3 years of research, countless sleepless nights, and one devastating betrayal, I'd finally done it. My name is Michaela, and I'm a microbiologist who just discovered a potential treatment for an aggressive form of lymphoma. But 2 years ago, I was just Ethan's wife, the woman who supposedly couldn't handle his entrepreneurial spirit and visionary mindset. Michaela, you need to see this! Matteo burst into my lab waving his tablet. The results from the second trial are even better than we expected. I looked up from my microscope, forcing myself to focus on the present. Show me. He slid the tablet across my desk, his excitement palpable. The cellular regeneration rate is unprecedented. This could be revolutionary. I know. I smiled, but my phone buzzed, displaying my lawyer's name. Give me a minute. Matteo nodded and stepped out. I answered the call, my heart racing. It's done, my lawyer said. The divorce is final. Ethan didn't contest any of the terms. Of course he didn't. He was too busy with Luna, his new girlfriend, and their shared vision for his company. The same company he'd built using my family's connections. The ones who'd chosen his side when everything fell apart. My sister Josephine's words still rang in my ears. You're just jealous of his success, Michaela. He's building something amazing, and you're too focused on your little lab experiments to see it. Little lab experiments. I glanced at the groundbreaking results on my screen and let out a bitter laugh. Michaela, Matteo poked his head back in. The team's waiting for the briefing. I straightened my lab coat and followed him to the conference room. 6 eager faces looked up at me, ready to hear about our progress. This was my real family now, the ones who'd believed in me when everyone else hadn't. Today, I began, we've achieved something remarkable. As I presented our findings, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Text messages from Josephine. Can we talk? It's about Ethan. Please, it's important. I ignored them all. After the presentation, Violet, our lead researcher, cornered me in the hallway. You're distracted today. Everything okay? Divorce papers came through. She squeezed my arm. Want to grab dinner? Talk about it? Actually, yes. I needed someone who understood. Someone who hadn't been charmed by Ethan's smooth talking and empty promises. At the small Italian restaurant around the corner, I finally let myself break down. You know what's funny? He always said my work was a waste of time, that I should focus on supporting his dreams instead. Violet poured more wine. Men like that can't stand when women outshine them. How's your family taking it? Still radio silent except for Josephine's texts today. Probably wants money. I stabbed at my pasta. They all bought into his lies. Mum even remortgaged her house to invest in his company. And now? Now I have a breakthrough that could change lives, and they're not here to see it. I took a deep breath. But maybe that's for the best. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from our department head. Urgent meeting tomorrow. Major pharmaceutical company interested in your research. Bring full documentation. Violet read the email over my shoulder and grinned. Now that's karma. It's more than that. I felt a smile tugging at my lips. It's validation. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I allowed myself to really feel it all. The triumph, the vindication, the lingering hurt. My laptop screen showed a news article about Ethan's company, promising revolutionary tech solutions. The comments section was full of investors asking questions about delayed products and missed deadlines. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. Michaela, it's Luna. We need to talk about Ethan, please. I deleted the message without responding and opened my research files instead. Tomorrow would be a big day, and I needed to be ready. Not for Ethan, not for my family, but for myself and the patients who could benefit from my work. As I reviewed my documentation, another email came through, this time from the pharmaceutical company itself. The numbers they were proposing made my head spin. More zeros than I'd ever seen. I thought about Ethan's face if he knew. About Josephine's dismissive words, about my mother's blind faith in the wrong person. But mostly I thought about the patients in our trials who were already showing improvement. That was the real victory. Not the revenge, not the money, but the lives we could save. I closed my laptop and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about proving them wrong by succeeding beyond their wildest expectations. 2 years flew by in a blur of clinical trials, research papers, and increasingly promising results. I was in the middle of reviewing our latest data when Matteo rushed into my office, his face flushed with excitement. "Have you seen the news?" He thrust his phone at me. "Your ex-husband's company is under investigation for fraud." I took the phone, scanning the headline. Tech startup under SEC investigation. Investors allege misuse of funds. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little satisfied, I admitted, handing the phone back. A little? Matteo raised an eyebrow. The man nearly destroyed you, and now his house of cards is falling apart just as your treatment is about to hit the market. Before I could respond, Violet burst in. "Emergency meeting in the conference room. The FDA just fast-tracked our approval process." The next hour was a whirlwind of congratulations and planning. Our treatment had shown such promising results that the FDA was pushing it through at record speed. As I stood at the head of the conference table, outlining our next steps, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Finally, during a break, I checked it. 15 missed calls from Josephine, 10 from my mother, and several from numbers I didn't recognize. "Your family finally remembering you exist?" Violet asked, noticing my frown. Funny how that works, isn't it? I silenced my phone. 2 years of silence, and now they can't stop calling. Back in my office, I listened to one of Josephine's voicemails. "Michaela, please, you have to help us. Mom's about to lose everything. Ethan, he..." "Just call me back, okay?" "You're not actually going to call her back, are you?" Matteo asked from the doorway. "I don't know." I rubbed my temples. "Part of me wants to ignore them like they ignored me, but you're not them," he finished. "That's why you're succeeding while they're failing." My computer pinged with a new email, another major hospital wanting to participate in our trials. The contrast between my rising success and Ethan's collapse wasn't lost on me. "Dr. Warner?" My assistant poked her head in. "There's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister." I exchanged looks with Matteo. "Send her in." Josephine looked nothing like the polished, confident woman who told me I was jealous and small-minded 2 years ago. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smudged. "5 minutes," I said, gesturing to a chair. "Michaela, She started, then burst into tears. "Everything's falling apart. Ethan's company. It was all fake. The technology never worked. He used Mom's money, my money, everyone's money. And now you need my help?" I kept my voice neutral. "Your treatment, it's worth millions. The patents alone could save us. Mom's going to lose her house, and I had to pull my kids out of private school and..." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Let me get this straight. You're here because you want me to use my success. The work you called a waste of time, to bail out Ethan." "Not Ethan," she protested. "Mom, me, the kids. Please, Michaela." Matteo cleared his throat. "I'll give you two some privacy." After he left, I leaned back in my chair. Where was this concern for family when Ethan was spreading lies about me? When you all cut me out? "I was wrong," Josephine whispered. "We were all wrong. I'm so sorry." My phone buzzed again. Another hospital CEO wanting to discuss implementation. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I need time to think," I said finally. "This isn't just about money. There are patients counting on this treatment." "I understand." Josephine stood, wiping her eyes. "But please, just think about Mom." After she left, Violet found me staring out my office window. "You okay?" "Did you know our treatment could help lymphoma patients increase their survival rate by 60%? I turned to face her. "That's not just numbers. That's people getting to see their kids grow up." "And now your family wants to use that to fix their mistakes." "Exactly." I picked up a photo from my desk. Me with my research team, all of us grinning after our first successful trial. They chose Ethan's empty promises over my real work. Now they want me to compromise that work to save them. My phone buzzed yet again. This time it was Ethan's number. "Don't answer it," Violet warned. "I won't." I declined the call. "But I need to figure out what to do about all this." "You don't owe them anything," she reminded me. "I know." I looked at the latest trial results on my screen. But this treatment isn't about revenge. It's about helping people. As if on cue, my assistant appeared again. "Dr. Warner, the parents of one of our trial patients are here. They want to thank you personally." I stood up, straightening my lab coat. "Send them in. This is what really matters." But as I prepared to meet them, Ethan's text flashed on my phone. "We need to talk. Everything's not what it seems. Please." I turned my phone face down. Whatever drama Ethan and my family were involved in would have to wait. I had lives to save first. The next morning I arrived at work to find my mother sitting in my office. She looked older, more worn than I remembered, her usually perfect hair showing streaks of grey. "How did you get in here?" I asked, setting down my coffee. "Your assistant. I told her I was your mother." She stood, wringing her hands. "Michaela, we need to talk about what's happening." "What's happening is I have a meeting in 20 minutes with the hospital board." I checked my watch. "So, make it quick." "Josephine told me she came to see you yesterday." She took a shaky breath. "There's more you need to know. Ethan. He didn't just take our money. He took everything." Matteo appeared in the doorway, folders in hand, but stopped when he saw my mother. I waved him in. "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of Matteo. He's been here for me when my family wasn't." My mother flinched but continued. "The FBI is investigating him. They're saying he ran a Ponzi scheme, that none of the technology ever existed. He used new investor money to pay old investors, and when that dried up, he moved on to family money," I finished. "I'm not surprised. That's what con men do." "Your father's pension," she whispered. "Our savings, the house, even your cousin's college fund. We all believed in him." "No," I corrected her. "You all believed him over me. There's a difference." Matteo cleared his throat. "Dr. Warner, the board is gathering early." "I'll be right there." I turned back to my mother. "I have to go." "Please." She grabbed my arm. "Just look at this first." She handed me a stack of papers, bank statements, legal notices, foreclosure warnings. My stomach turned as I saw the numbers. "Mom, I can't—" "Your treatment," she interrupted. "The pharmaceutical companies are offering millions. We could make this right." "Make this right?" I laughed bitterly. "You want me to use my life's work, the work you all dismissed, to fix Ethan's crimes?" "To help your family," she pleaded. Before I could respond, Violet burst in. "Michaela, you need to see this now." She turned on the office TV. Ethan's face filled the screen, standing outside a courthouse. He looked haggard, his usual confident smile replaced by desperation. "I maintain my innocence," he was saying to reporters. "These allegations are false. Our technology works. We just need more time." "Turn it off," I said quietly. My mother was crying now. "He told us he had buyers lined up. Major companies ready to invest billions. Like the way he told everyone I was unstable, that I was sabotaging his work out of jealousy." I gathered my files for the board meeting. "I have to go." "Michaela, please." "I'll think about it," I said, not looking at her. "But right now I have actual work to do." The board meeting was a triumph. Our treatment success rates were unprecedented, and the pharmaceutical company was increasing their offer. As I presented the latest data, I could feel my future solidifying. Speaking engagements, research grants, worldwide implementation. Afterward, Matteo found me in the lab. "Your mother's still here." "Of course she is." I adjusted my microscope. "Did she tell you how she took Ethan's side during the divorce? How she told me I was being childish and jealous?" "She mentioned it." He sat beside me. "She also showed me the foreclosure notice. It's bad, Michaela." "I know." I pushed away from the microscope. "But this treatment, it's not just about money. We're saving lives. And you can keep saving lives while helping your family, he said gently. The two aren't mutually exclusive. My phone buzzed. A text from Luna. They're freezing all his assets. Even my apartment, please talk to him. It's spreading, I muttered. Like a virus. Violet appeared with more news. Ethan's business partner just turned state's evidence. It's all over the financial news. I pulled up the article on my computer. The scope of Ethan's fraud was staggering. Hundreds of millions in investor money, all built on lies and false promises. Your name isn't mentioned anywhere, Violet noted. Small mercies, I closed the browser, but my family's will be soon enough. My mother appeared in the doorway again, looking smaller than ever. The FBI wants to interview me tomorrow. They're saying we might be held liable, that we should have known. I stood up, suddenly tired. Go home, Mom. I'll come by tonight. We'll talk about options. After she left, Violet touched my arm. You're not responsible for fixing this. No, I agreed, but I might be responsible for what happens next. My phone lit up with another text, this time from Josephine. Mom told me you'll help. Thank you. I know we don't deserve it. I didn't respond. Instead, I looked at the latest patient photos on my wall. People smiling, living, surviving because of our work. Whatever I decided, I couldn't let Ethan's lies taint that truth. Schedule a meeting with the lawyers, I told Violet. If we're going to do this, we're doing it my way. You want to do what? Matteo stared at me across the conference room table, his coffee forgotten. Set up a separate foundation, I repeated, spreading out the draft documents our lawyers had prepared. The pharmaceutical deal money goes into research and patient assistance. A portion gets allocated to help fraud victims, including my family, but not exclusively. Violet leaned forward. You're turning your revenge into a rescue mission? More like turning poison into medicine. I smiled grimly. Isn't that what we do anyway? Before anyone could respond, my assistant interrupted. Dr. Warner, Ethan's here. The room fell silent. I hadn't seen him in person since the divorce. Should we call security? Matteo asked, half rising. No, I stood up. I need to handle this. Ethan waited in my office, looking expensive even in distress. His suit was perfectly tailored, but his eyes were haunted. You look well, Michaela, he said softly. Success suits you. What do you want, Ethan? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. I need your help, but not the way you think. The way I think is that you're facing federal charges and trying to drag my family down with you. It's more complicated than that. He pulled out his phone, showing me an email. There are people, powerful investors. They're willing to make this all go away if we can show them working technology. I laughed. And you want what? To pretend my treatment is part of your company's portfolio? Think about it, he leaned forward. Your research, my connections, we could help everyone. Your family, my investors, the patients. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You haven't changed at all, have you? Still trying to use other people's work to cover your lies. I made mistakes, he admitted, but people will lose everything. Your mother, Josephine, even Luna. Don't. My voice sharpened. Don't pretend you care about them. You used them, just like you used me. A knock at the door revealed Violet. Everything okay in here? Fine. I didn't take my eyes off Ethan. He was just leaving. Michaela, please, his voice cracked. I know I hurt you, but this is bigger than us. You're right about that. I walked to my office door and opened it, which is why I'm handling it my way. After he left, I called an emergency meeting with my team and the lawyers. The conference room filled quickly, everyone sensing the importance. Here's what we're going to do, I announced, distributing folders. The foundation will operate independently from the pharmaceutical deal. Complete transparency, ethical oversight, no room for manipulation. What about your family? Matteo asked. They'll have to apply like anyone else affected by the fraud. No special treatment. The lawyers nodded approvingly. One spoke up. This protects you and your research while still providing aid. It's elegant. It's fair, I corrected. Something Ethan never understood. My phone buzzed. Josephine again. Just saw Ethan leaving your building. What did he want? I ignored it and focused on the meeting. We spent hours hammering out details, ensuring everything was airtight. By evening, we had a solid plan. You're doing the right thing, Violet said as we packed up, even if it's not the easy thing. Nothing about this has been easy. I gathered my papers, but I won't let Ethan turn my work into another one of his schemes. At home that night, I finally called Josephine back. Ethan tried to convince me to help him fake technology for his investors, I told her. Oh, God, she sounded sick. And I'm setting up a foundation instead. You'll get information about applying for assistance soon. Applying? Her voice rose. Michaela, we're family. Exactly. Which is why you'll understand that I have to do this right. After hanging up, I opened my laptop to find an email from Luna. Whatever Ethan told you today, please know some of us were victims too. I never knew. I closed the email without responding. My screen showed a news alert. FBI expands investigation into tech startup fraud. Multiple conspirators suspected. My phone rang. My mother this time. I heard about your foundation idea, she said quietly. It's good, Michaela. It's what you always were, someone who helps people. Even when those people hurt me, I asked. Especially then, she paused. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. I looked at the patient photos on my wall, then at the foundation documents on my desk. Mom, I need you to understand something. This isn't forgiveness. This is justice for everyone involved. I understand. Her voice was small. Thank you for not abandoning us completely. After we hung up, I texted Matteo. Meeting tomorrow at 8. Time to put this plan in motion. His response came quickly. You're doing something extraordinary here, don't forget that. I smiled, thinking how different this felt from revenge. This was something better, something healing. The Foundation's launch event was set for Friday evening at the city's main hospital. I stood at the podium adjusting my notes when I spotted Ethan slipping into the back of the auditorium. He's got some nerve, Matteo muttered beside me. Let him stay, I said. He should see this. The room filled quickly. Medical professionals, investors, media, and victims of Ethan's fraud. My mother and Josephine sat in the middle, looking uncomfortable in their dated business attire. Luna hovered near the exit, her designer clothes a stark contrast to her anxious expression. Ready? Violet squeezed my arm. I nodded and stepped up to the microphone. Good evening. I'm Dr. Michaela Warner, and today we're announcing something unprecedented in medical research. As I outlined the Foundation's dual mission, advancing treatment accessibility while providing restitution to fraud victims, I watched Ethan's face. His expression shifted from hope to confusion to something like fear. Every dollar of fraud victims' money that went into false promises, I continued, will be matched by our foundation for real medical advancement. We're turning empty words into actual healing. The audience stirred. I saw my mother wipe her eyes. Applications for assistance open next week, I explained. Every claim will be evaluated fairly regardless of personal connections or past relationships. Ethan stood up, moving toward the podium. Security tensed, but I held up my hand. Dr. Warner, he called out, his voice carrying across the room. May I ask a question? The audience turned to stare at him. Some recognized him from the news coverage. Of course, I said calmly. Transparency is one of our core values. This foundation, he said, it's using the pharmaceutical company's payment for your treatment, isn't it? Money that could have gone to you personally? Yes. I met his gaze. Because unlike some people, I believe success comes with responsibility. A reporter raised her hand. Dr. Warner, is it true that the man asking questions is your ex-husband currently under federal investigation? Yes, I answered. And his question highlights exactly why this foundation is necessary. While some people built empires on lies, we're building something real on truth. Ethan's face reddened. Michaela, please. We need to talk privately. No, we don't. I gestured to the presentation screen behind me, showing patient recovery statistics. These numbers are what matter. Real results, real hope. He took another step forward. You're doing this to punish me. Actually, Violet stood up. "She's doing this to help people, including those you hurt. Now please sit down or leave." The room buzzed with whispers. I saw phones recording everything. "The Foundation's first initiative," I continued, ignoring Ethan, "will fund treatment for 50 lymphoma patients who couldn't otherwise afford it. Their lives matter more than any revenge." Applause broke out. Ethan slumped in his seat, finally silent. After the presentation during the reception, my mother approached me. "I saw the application forms," she said quietly. "They're thorough. They have to be." I sipped my water. "Everyone gets treated equally. Even family? Especially family." I watched Josephine across the room talking to one of the Foundation's lawyers. "It's the only way this works." Luna appeared next, looking nervous. "Can we talk?" I led her to a quiet corner. She pulled out her phone, showing me emails. "Ethan's been moving money," she said. "Hidden accounts. He told me it was normal business practice, but after your speech tonight—" "You should take those to the FBI, I said gently. "I already did." She straightened her shoulders. "I'm done protecting him." Across the room, Ethan watched us, his face pale. When he started walking over, Matteo stepped between us. "I think you've done enough damage," he told Ethan. "This isn't over," Ethan hissed, but security was already approaching. As they escorted him out, I heard him call back, "You'll regret this, Michaela. You can't play saint forever." Violet appeared at my side. "You okay?" "Better than okay." I watched the doors close behind him. For the first time, I feel completely free. The evening wound down with more interviews, handshakes, and photographs. My team beamed with pride as reporters asked about our research breakthroughs. Finally, as the last guests left, Josephine lingered. "I'll help," she said suddenly. "With the Foundation. Processing applications, whatever you need. I want to make things right." I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse. "There's a lot of work to do." "I know." She smiled sadly. "But you showed me what real success looks like. It's not what Ethan promised. It's what you built." As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with messages of support and media requests. But one text from Matteo stood out. "You didn't just beat him. You showed everyone a better way. That's the best revenge." I smiled, thinking of the patients who would benefit, the victims who would find justice, and the family that might finally learn from their mistakes. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, more healing. But tonight, I had peace knowing I'd chosen the right path. Not the easiest one, but the one that would help the most people. "The first round of Foundation applications is overwhelming," Josephine said, spreading papers across my office desk. "Over 300 victims so far, and more coming in." I looked up from my microscope. 3 weeks had passed since the launch, and my sister had thrown herself into the Foundation work with surprising dedication. "Any familiar names?" I asked. "Too many." She held up a stack. "Half our extended family, most of Dad's golf club, even my kid's former piano teacher." Matteo knocked and entered with fresh coffee. "The FBI's here again. They want to talk about the offshore accounts Luna revealed." "Send them in." I stood, straightening my lab coat. "Josephine, would you—" "Stay," she interrupted. "I should tell them what I know too." 2 agents entered, the same ones who'd interviewed me last week. They looked grimmer than before. "Dr. Warner," the female agent began, "we've uncovered something disturbing. Your ex-husband wasn't just running a Ponzi scheme. He was selling medical research data." My stomach dropped. "What kind of data?" "Early versions of your treatment research." She pulled out some documents. "We found emails where he claimed to have proprietary medical breakthroughs." "That's impossible," I breathed. "That research never left the lab." "Unless," Josephine said quietly, "he took it during your marriage." The memory hit me. Ethan, always so interested in my work, asking questions, photographing my notes to understand my passion better. "We'll need access to your original research files," the male agent said. "To compare with what he sold?" "Of course." I turned to Matteo. "Get them everything." After the agents left, Violet rushed in. "You need to see the news." On my office TV, Ethan was being led out of his company building in handcuffs. The crawler beneath read, Tech CEO arrested, medical data theft added to charges. He's really done it now, Josephine whispered. Stealing medical research? That's federal prison time. My phone buzzed. Luna again. They're questioning everyone. Your mother's at the FBI office now. Go, Matteo told me. We'll handle things here. At the FBI office, I found my mother in tears. I didn't know, she kept saying. He asked me to invest in medical technology. I thought he was supporting your work. Mrs. Warner, the agent said gently, did your son-in-law ever show you any research documents? Yes, she wiped her eyes. He said they were breakthrough treatments, that Michaela was part of it all. I felt sick. Mum, I never gave him permission to share my work. I know that now. She reached for my hand. I'm so sorry, honey. We were all so blind. Back at the lab, Violet had news. The pharmaceutical company wants to make a statement supporting you. They're doubling their commitment to the foundation. Good. I sat heavily in my chair. Because we're going to need it, those stolen research files. Who knows how many people invested based on them? Josephine, who'd followed me back, spoke up. I have an idea. What if we expand the foundation's scope? Not just financial help, but a whole program to educate people about scientific integrity and investment fraud. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her? The entitled woman who'd dismissed my work was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood value beyond money. Actually, I said, that's brilliant. We worked late into the night, revising the foundation's mission. Matteo ordered dinner, and even my mother stayed, helping organize victim statements. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Your research saved my daughter's life. I invested in Ethan's company because I believed in that kind of miracle. I'm sorry it wasn't real, but thank you for making the real thing happen. I showed it to the others. This is why we do this. No, Violet corrected. This is why you do this. You took something painful and made it healing. My mother touched my arm. I keep thinking about all those board meetings at Ethan's company. The way he'd talk about medical breakthroughs, and I'd sit there feeling so proud. I never once asked why you weren't involved. Because he was good at telling people what they wanted to hear, I said. But now we're showing them what's real. Josephine looked up from her stack of applications. Speaking of real, we should probably talk about my application. I know you said no special treatment, but nothing. I took the paper from her. You'll go through the same process as everyone else. That's how we maintain integrity. She nodded, and I saw respect in her eyes, maybe for the first time. My phone buzzed again. The FBI. Need you in court tomorrow, Ethan's arraignment. I'll go with you, Matteo offered. We all will, Violet added. I looked around my office, at my sister organizing papers, my mother finally understanding my work, my team standing by me. This wasn't the family I'd imagined having, but it was the one I'd built. Tomorrow then, I said. We face him together. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when we arrived. Ethan's arrest had become national news, a cautionary tale of tech fraud meeting medical ethics. Dr. Warner, they called out. How does it feel knowing your ex-husband stole your research? Before I could respond, Matteo stepped forward. Dr. Warner will make a statement after the arraignment. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Luna sat in the front row, her designer clothes replaced by a simple black suit. She nodded slightly as we passed. All rise, the bailiff called. Ethan entered in an orange jumpsuit, handcuffed, looking nothing like the confident man who'd once dismissed my work as just lab stuff. His eyes found mine, pleading. The charges were red. Wire fraud, securities fraud, theft of intellectual property, conspiracy to commit fraud. The list went on. How does the defendant plead? The judge asked. Ethan's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to make a statement. This should be good, Violet whispered beside me. Your Honor, Ethan began, his voice shaking. I admit I made mistakes, but everything I did was to create something meaningful. Dr. Warner's research. I only shared it because I believed in its potential. I felt my mother stiffen beside me. The defendant will enter a plea, the judge interrupted. Not guilty, Ethan said, then turned to face me. Michaela, please, tell them we were building something together. I stood up. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded. Mr. Harding never had permission to use my research. While he was telling investors about medical breakthroughs, I was actually creating them. In my lab, with my team. He didn't believe in potential. He believed in profit. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Ethan's face reddened. Order, the judge called. Mr. Harding, given the severity of the charges and the flight risk, bail is denied. As they led Ethan away, Luna approached me. The FBI found more accounts. He was planning to flee to a non-extradition country. Of course he was, I said. He never faced consequences before. Outside, the media waited. This time, I was ready. Dr. Warner, a reporter called, what would you say to other scientists worried about their research being stolen? I'd say that truth prevails. I gestured to my team. Real breakthroughs happen in labs, not boardrooms. Real healing comes from dedication, not deception. And what about the foundation? Another asked. The foundation continues its work. Today we're announcing full funding for another 100 lymphoma patients, plus educational programs about scientific integrity. Josephine stepped forward. As someone who invested in the fraud, I can say the foundation isn't just about money. It's about rebuilding trust. Back at the lab, celebrations were in order. Our treatment had just received final FDA approval, and the first round of foundation grants was ready. Look at this, Violet said, showing me her tablet. Our story was trending. Medical breakthrough triumphs over tech fraud. The pharmaceutical company's stock is soaring, Matteo added. They're calling it the integrity bump. My mother appeared with coffee for everyone. She'd been volunteering at the foundation, learning about real medical research. I spoke to Dad, she said quietly. He's finally ready to talk. Seeing Ethan in court, it opened his eyes. Speaking of opening eyes, Josephine called from my computer, you need to see these application responses. She pulled up emails from fraud victims. Not angry demands for money, but thoughtful reflections on lessons learned. Many asked to join our educational programs. We're changing the narrative, I realized. It's not just about losing money anymore. It's about understanding value. Luna appeared in my doorway. The prosecutors want to meet tomorrow. They're offering a deal, but they need your input. No deals, I said firmly. He needs to face everything he did. Agreed. She handed me a flash drive. Here's everything I found in his private files. He kept detailed notes about how he used your research, called it his insurance policy. I took the drive, feeling its weight. Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like, she replied. That evening, as my team celebrated our FDA approval, I watched them all. Matteo arranging patient schedules, Violet explaining the treatment to new doctors, Josephine helping fraud victims understand the application process, my mother learning the difference between real research and empty promises. My phone buzzed with a message from Ethan's lawyer. He wants to make a deal. Says he'll reveal everything about the fraud if you support leniency. I showed it to Violet, who scoffed, still trying to manipulate his way out. Not this time, I said, deleting the message. The lab's TV showed Ethan's company building being raided by federal agents. But across the street, our foundation's new educational center was opening its doors. Dr. Warner, my assistant appeared. The first round of funded patients is here for treatment. I stood, straightening my lab coat. This was real success, not revenge, not vindication, but actual healing. As I headed to meet the patients, I caught my reflection in the window. I barely recognized the woman who'd once doubted her worth in Ethan's shadow. She was gone, replaced by someone who knew exactly who she was and what she could do. The morning of Ethan's sentencing, I stood at my lab window watching the sunrise paint the city gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Matteo. Court in an hour, ready? Before I could respond, Josephine rushed in. You need to see this. She handed me her tablet, showing an email from Ethan. He'd sent it to everyone he'd ever contacted about his fraudulent company. Today, I face sentencing for my crimes. But first, I owe you all the truth. The medical breakthroughs I promised weren't mine to promise. They belonged to my ex-wife, Dr. Michaela Warner. While I sold lies, she created genuine healing. The foundation she built from the ashes of my fraud represents everything I pretended to be but never was. He actually admitted it, I whispered. There's more, Josephine said. Look at the responses. Hundreds of replies flooded in, from investors, victims, even former employees. Not angry accusations, but messages of support for the foundation's work. Violet appeared with coffee. The pharmaceutical company saw the email. They're tripling their funding commitment. And the patient waiting list? I asked. We can help them all now, she smiled. Every single one. In the courthouse, Ethan stood before the judge in his orange jumpsuit, shoulders slumped. Before sentencing, the judge said, Dr. Warner has requested to speak. I walked to the podium, feeling everyone's eyes. Your Honor, when my ex-husband stole my research, he didn't just commit fraud. He betrayed the trust of people hoping for healing. But something unexpected happened. His crimes led to the creation of a foundation that's now helping more people than his false promises ever could. I turned to face Ethan directly. You taught me something important, I continued. Success isn't about winning or revenge. It's about turning damage into healing. The judge nodded. Mr. Harding, you've pled guilty to all charges. Given the scope of your fraud and the theft of medical research, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison. As they led him away, Ethan caught my eye. I'm sorry, he mouthed. Outside, my mother waited with news. Dad's here. He wants to help with the Foundation's education program. Says he can teach others about the warning signs he missed. Before I could respond, Luna approached. The FBI finished tracking the money. With what they've recovered, plus the pharmaceutical funding, the Foundation can expand globally. Speaking of global, Matteo said, checking his phone, the World Health Organization wants you to speak about medical ethics and fraud prevention. I looked at my assembled family, not just blood relatives, but the people who'd stood by me through everything. Violet organizing patient care, Matteo protecting our research, Josephine rebuilding trust, my parents finally understanding real value. Dr. Warner? A young woman approached, holding a little girl's hand. My daughter was in your first treatment group. I wanted you to see. The girl smiled, healthy and bright. I'm going back to school next week. This, I told my team, this is what real success looks like. Back at the lab, we gathered for an impromptu celebration. The TV showed coverage of Ethan's sentencing, but nobody watched. We were too busy reviewing patient progress reports. Remember when he said your work was just lab stuff? Violet asked, pouring champagne. Now it's saving lives, Matteo added. My phone buzzed. A message from the pharmaceutical company. Treatment approval in 27 new countries. Foundation offices opening next month. Josephine looked up from her stack of applications. You know what's amazing? People aren't just asking for help anymore. They're asking how they can contribute. Because you showed them how, my mother said. You turned your pain into purpose. We all did, I corrected her. Every person in this room chose truth over lies, healing over hurt. The lab door opened, and my father walked in for the first time. He stood awkwardly, taking in the research displays, the patient photos, the Foundation's mission statement on the wall. I was wrong, he said simply, about everything. Show me how I can help make it right. I handed him a Foundation volunteer badge. Welcome to the team. As evening fell, I walked through the lab one last time before heading home. The microscopes that once represented lonely nights now showed breakthrough discoveries. The office where I'd received divorce papers now housed healing plans for thousands. My phone lit up with a final message from Ethan's prison email. You did what I never could. You built something real. I hope someday you can forgive me. I didn't respond. Instead, I texted my team. Tomorrow we start helping patients in 3 new countries. Better get some rest. Looking out at the city lights, I smiled. This wasn't the ending I'd expected when my marriage collapsed, when my family chose sides, when my work was stolen. It was better. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, building bigger, healing harder. And sometimes the family you rebuild is stronger than the one you lost. I turned off my office light and headed out, ready for tomorrow's challenges. After all, real success stories don't end, they just keep growing.